Jacob from Miami. You're on with Tracy and Reggie, and you want to talk about evidence for creator.
Yeah, how are you guys doing?
Good. Thank you.
First I wanted to, you guys were talking about earlier about why God doesn't manifest himself or why doesn't God show himself. And I just wanted to say, I think an appropriate biblical response to that would be that even if he did, people still wouldn't accept him. You see evidence of that in the Old Testament with the nation of Israel. He did manifest himself and they still didn't believe. So just wanted to sort of.
Right, but he still manifested himself, right?
Right, but it didn't matter. They still
right. So it didn't matter, and yet God kept doing it, and all of a sudden he doesn't do it anymore.
Well, whether I believe, whether I believe in God or not after he shows up is a different question. The first step is to show up, which he can't and he will not, because I know why. But if I still disbelieve, then that's on me. But at least everybody can see that, wow, you got the evidence and you still don't believe. Then that's something that we can deal with after the fact. But the point is that I asked that question because that's like a really good way to show that you actually exist, to show up.
Right, but if God knows that regardless of whether or not he shows up, you're not going to believe, then I would say him not showing up is understandable.
No, it's not when he has a history of showing up. When he has a history of showing up, and you're saying he actually has a history of showing up repeatedly in the Old Testament, even to people that didn't believe, and even when people still didn't believe, and he's omnipotent or whatever, or omniscient and knew that they weren't going to believe, and then suddenly you're saying, well, the reason he's not showing up on your show is because you're not going to believe anyway, even though he has a history of doing exactly that.
And Jacob, how does that work? How does that work when a person shows up and I still don't believe? Like Tracy's here. How can I say to everybody, I still don't believe that you exist? She's right there.
Right.
I mean, it's a done deal.
You might at that point acknowledge that he exists. You might at that point say, okay, yeah, you exist, but you wouldn't submit to his authority.
So what?
You would still be in rebellion.
So what?
I would not submit to his authority because I think he's evil. But I could not be a believer anymore because he would have showed up. It would be the same thing as if the devil shows up to you right now, would you submit to his authority?
Right. No, absolutely not. Because I think he's evil.
Exactly. So it's kind of like the same thing for me.
That's my point, though. You kind of just proved my point, though, in what you just said. You think he's evil, so you, like the scripture says, you hate him. So if he shows up, what's that going to do? You're just going to tell
right,
him
but he did. I guess what I keep saying and what I keep coming back to is that your argument that this is a reason not to show up is invalidated by the fact that you already said that he did, even in these same circumstances.
How is it invalidated by him showing up in the past? That doesn't.
Because what you're basically saying is if you know somebody's not going to believe in you anyway, why would you show up? And it's like you'd have to ask God because he's done it.
Oh, okay.
Right? And so if it's within his character to do that, wait a minute, if it's within his character to do that, you can sit here all day and make up reasons why he shouldn't do it or wouldn't do it. But the fact is he does do it. And if he does do it, there's no reason to not do it now.
Right. Well, it's not that it's in his character to do that. He shows up in the Old Testament for specific reasons. It wasn't just him doing it because
he was asked.
He did that.
Right? He was asked to show up and prove to these unbelievers that he was God.
Yeah. Well, essentially, like I said, it just doesn't. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, you can agree. We can agree to disagree on that. I don't understand.
No, he did it. There's no disagreeing. He did it.
So your argument is that regardless of whether or not you would actually respond, the fact that he doesn't show up is some sort of evidence that he doesn't exist.
Right. When the tradition is that he does show up, even to non-believers, yes.
Okay. So, I don't know how that's a logical argument.
Can I say something real quick? Jacob, you're conflating two different things, if I may interject. The first thing is to show that he exists, so he shows up. The second thing that you're talking about is whether I would follow him, whether I like him or I don't like him. That's a separate question. If he shows up, we all will say that we believe because we have the evidence. The second question is we will then worship, and I'm not going to worship if it's Yahweh of the Bible because I disagree with what he's done. And I think you would disagree with what he's done too if you're a decent person. Just the same way that if the devil shows up to you, you would probably disagree with him. I don't know why, because he hasn't done as much evil.
When you say what he's done, are you referring to like the Canaanite tribes? What are you referring to?
Well, yeah, I'm talking about the Canaanite tribe. I'm talking about drowning everybody. I'm talking about
So let me ask you a question. If there was a country right now that you saw in the news was sacrificing their own children to gods, and the United States decided to go in there and take over, would you have a problem with that?
And kill all the rest of the remaining children? Yeah.
That's not really what happened. But I'm sure you've heard that argument before. That's not really what happened.
Wait. So, Jacob, do you have a problem with killing your own child?
Well, of course.
Okay, because I know that's what Yahweh is famous for, right? Jesus, he gave his only beloved son, so that, that's how the whole Christian.
The sins of the whole entire planet.
But right, so his child got sacrificed.
Right, he made a human sacrifice basically, and that was his whole setup, right? He could have made any plan he wanted, and his plan was a human sacrifice.
Well, because but he, obviously God knows that Jesus is God. Jesus is God incarnate. It's not like he's losing his son.
So maybe the Canaanites.
So he didn't lose his son. Well, there's a new spin on the Christian.
So maybe
narrative.
the Canaanites knew something when they were doing their.
What do you mean that's a new spin?
Because most people say that God gave his only son. In fact, that's a quote almost from the Bible.
But Jesus is God incarnate.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life.
According to Christians, does Jesus still exist? According to the Christian faith?
Yes, they say he still exists. So, what you're basically saying is that there was no sacrifice now. Now your argument is that nothing was really sacrificed because nobody died.
He suffered. No, he suffered and died on the cross, but was he not resurrected?
They're saying that he was resurrected, which kind of negates the sacrifice, right? So nobody died.
Well,
How does it negate the sacrifice?
Because there wasn't one. If you're still alive, you didn't die.
Jacob, I just wanted to point out that if.
But wait a minute. But hold on. I just want to confirm what you just said. So you just said that he didn't die because he was resurrected from the dead.
Did he ever really die? According to the Christians, did he cease to exist at any point?
No.
Okay, so then he didn't die.
He's God.
Right. So there was no death.
The idea would be, and I'm sure you've heard of this, is the idea of hypostatic union. So Jesus has two natures. He's fully human, and at the same time, he's full deity.
But Jacob, a lot of people.
You can't be 100% human and 100% deity unless humans are deities.
A lot of people, even in the Bible, have resurrected. So even Jesus resurrecting is not a unique or thing, because that was
Lazarus was resurrected.
That reminds me of that drink that's like something like nothing but lemonade or something like that, and now they've got nothing but lemonade with cranberry. Like, it makes no sense.
You know what's interesting is that you guys are ready to admit that you don't know everything about science, but when it comes to theology, you that's not something you're.
No, I'm totally willing to say that a lot of this stuff makes no sense to me, and I don't understand it. And I'm just saying that when other people explain it, it doesn't make sense either.
So right, but does that mean that it's not true because you don't understand it?
No, but when somebody says something that's impossible, that would be not true.
Okay.
I can't say that this piece of fruit in my I can't say that I have a piece of fruit that is 100% apple and 100% orange. That piece of fruit doesn't exist.
That's not a good analogy. Jesus was fully God and fully man at the same time. So two separate natures.
You said he was 100% human and 100% God. That was exactly what you said.
Yeah, it should be. Well, it should be fully man, fully God. 100% is. I shouldn't have said that. So it's fully man, fully God.
Well, what if I said I'm fully man, I'm fully God?
Well, that's you can say that. That's irrelevant, though. The point is that
why is it irrelevant? Wait a minute. Why is it irrelevant?
Well, because that's not part of the conversation. He can deify himself if he wants. I don't see how that's relevant to the conversation.
I think he just did.
We're talking about the same thing.
No,
I just made a statement. I'm fully God and I'm fully man. So therefore.
Okay, great.
You're going to worship me?
I don't know.
Because you can see me. I've actually taken my time to show up to the Atheist Experience. You see me, unlike Yahweh, and you're not going to give me my just dues? That's 10% of your income, by the way. Thank you.
I don't understand how that. Yeah, that doesn't apply to Christians, but I don't understand how that's a relevant point.
It's relevant because I'm here. You're talking to me.
I don't understand how any of this is relevant because we're supposed to be talking about evidence for a creator.
Okay, right. So let me get to that point then. Do you guys think that there's any evidence at all for outside of any religion? So forget about talking specific religions. Just the idea that there's a creative being that put everything together. Do you think there's any evidence for that at all?
I see no evidence for it.
No, I do not.
You see no evidence for a creator?
Yes, that's what I just said.
Wow, that's amazing. So complex biology, the systems in the universe, that absolutely doesn't move you at all in terms of...
No, and it doesn't move biologists, and it doesn't move cosmologists either.
None of them. You can make that statement. No, there's no Christian biologists.
No, I'm not saying I'm saying that their knowledge of biology is not being put forward as some sort of published paper trying to demonstrate God's hand. So they don't see God's hand in it enough to actually try and assert that on a professional level. So as far as
plenty of them do, though. There's plenty of Christian biologists that write thesis statements. There's plenty of that.
Yeah, they tried it in Dover. They tried it in Dover where they put those papers on trial, and they found that it was just creationism dressed up to try and get it into a classroom, that there was really nothing, there was no validity to this. And in fact, other people in biology reject those ideas, such as irreducible complexity, right? If you go and look up the peer response to it, you're not going to find that this is the consensus of biologists. In fact, it's a minority fringe view.
Or we can do this. I'm here. I have some water in my cup. Can you ask the creator to create some wine right now?
Well, before we move on, I just want to say that if the scientists themselves are not publishing and saying, hey, it's our consensus that the field of biology demonstrates the hand of God, or it's our consensus that the field of cosmology demonstrates the hand of God, then you shouldn't be amazed when someone says, I don't see the hand of God in this stuff.
What you're saying right now is a dishonest argument. There's been scientists from Einstein to current day biologists and medical that can, that assert that the complexity of biology and the universe is absolutely and obviously evidence for a creator.
And yet they can't convince the broad field of biologists that there's anything to it, and they're, for the most part, not even trying, right?
But it's not, I don't really.
If it's that obvious, why aren't they just writing it down in terms that their peers can understand and that they can then be convinced that this shows the hand of God? This is not hard. This is how if you're a biologist and you're convinced of something that biology is demonstrating, that's the thing you do, right? You put forward a peer-reviewed paper and you make that argument and you let people assess it and criticize it. And when that's done, those arguments don't fly.
That assertion. They don't fly in your mind.
No, they don't fly in the fields in which they're being suggested by the fringe people suggesting them.
That's not true at all. That is not true at all. They're not accepted by atheists. To say that they're not accepted at all is a dishonest statement.
No, it's not dishonest at all. There is nothing about consensus of biology that dictates that there's a God. And there's nothing about the consensus of cosmology that concludes that there's a God.
No one's saying that it's conclusive evidence for a God.
No, I'm not saying conclusive. I'm saying consensus. The scientists themselves do not hold that this is a demonstrated fact based on their fields.
No, you're only going to give it. You're only going to see it as legitimate if there's a consensus.
Yes.
That's your standard.
That should be everyone's standard.
There's no consensus that what you believe is true. So how is your argument?
Holy cow! If a thing is not consensus, what you're basically saying is that the majority of people in the field, the majority of experts in this field do not believe this is a correct thing. And so when they're the experts in the field and they're validating this information and they're looking at the information and the evidence that's presented and they're saying, we don't think that this is the proper conclusion, that the person who wrote this paper, the conclusion that they're making or trying to make is not demonstrated by this evidence. There's problems with this paper. They're evaluating it based on professional expertise and the capacity to evaluate it. And they're saying in the majority that this is not evidence for a God. And so for you to act like I'm somehow amazing that I don't accept biology as evidence for God when the majority of biologists and the field of biology does not put it forward.
But I'm not talking about biology being evidence for God. I'm talking about biology being evidence for
a creator,
an indicator.
A creator. And they have not put this forward. This is not consensus. Biology does not say this. It doesn't promote it. It's not part of biology.
So you're saying
So you need a better argument than look at biology.
You're saying that the systems that cause your body to function, that work together, along with the systems in the universe that create an environment where this same body can thrive in.
No, it didn't create an environment in which this body can thrive. This is the puddle, man. We were just talking about this with another caller.
Okay, so
this is the puddle.
So the environment that you live in, that if it were any different, you probably wouldn't survive.
Then I would be different. I would be different, and we'd be having this conversation, and I would be different.
Okay, so
but the point is that people who study the fields and are expert in the fields that you are invoking do not accept your conclusion based on their knowledge of the field.
A growing number of them do.
No, I don't care about their personal beliefs. My plumber can be a Christian. It doesn't mean that plumbing demonstrates God.
No, I'm talking about people that actually study these things.
Right. They are not saying, they are not putting their money where their mouth is. They are not trying to present evidence to convince their peers to change the consensus of their field to say that it demonstrates a God. I don't even know what else to say about it. I mean, man, I'm dropping this call. I don't know how else to explain this. I mean, for somebody to just keep telling me, but biology, and it's like, yeah, and biologists have not come out with, as far as I know, there is no professional association of biologists that puts forward that biology demonstrates a God exists or that it is evidence for a creator. I don't know of any, valid peer-reviewed group of biologists who puts forward that this is demonstrated in their field. This is totally different than whether or not they personally believe a God exists. You can personally believe a God exists, and you can see God in, your toast or in a cell or a baby's face. But the fact is, unless you have consensus in the field of expert peers that this is really what we're looking at here, you don't get to just go around telling other people that that's how they have to look at it. Let the experts look at it that way. And if you think they should, then talk to them about it. Write your paper. Get it published. I mean, I just saw this thing about a little girl who was I think she was 11 or 12, and she got her first paper published in JAMA, right? So you don't even have to have the requisite degrees. She did a study on, touch healing or something like that. Now, this wasn't a recent thing. It was in a book that I was reading on management, actually. But it dealt with the idea of evidence and testing and measurability. It was talking about how you can measure intangibles. And so they talked about this study that the little girl did and how simple it is sometimes to measure a thing that sounds like it's complicated. And she did this little study, but she was just a child, and she published in JAMA. It's like, if you really want to prove it, if you really think you're seeing it, and you think that experts in the field need to see it, not just on a personal level, but a professional, let them put their credentials on this. And some of them do. There are papers published on irreducible complexity, and they get shredded by the community of peers. You don't see the community of peers saying, wow, we never thought of this before. This is completely convincing. Or even, we should look into this more because this is definitely something going on here. You don't even see that. You just see blanket criticism.